Hello, this is Scott Gordon.
Hi, I'm Paul Holmgren.
Hey, this is the biggest suitcase to ever play the game, Mike McKenna.
This is Dale Weiss.
Hi, this is Bob Clark.
You're listening to...
And you're listening to...
You're listening to...
And you're listening to...
Snow the Goalie.
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 Couturier swallowed it, score! Mike Richards through the seam, deflected stop. Gagne! He scores! The deep, the save by Boucher, and the Flyers are going to the playoffs!
Welcome back into Snow the Goalie, the only Flyers podcast, the People's Podcast, the Players Podcast, the Prognosticators Podcast, the Presidential Podcast, the Pampers Podcast, the Pedialyte Podcast, the Posthumous Podcast. Of course, we are mourning the loss of the 2019-2020 Philadelphia Flyers season before it even begins. I'm Russ Joy, at Joy on Broad on Twitter, joined as always by the fantastic Anthony SanFilippo, who you can find on Twitter at AntSanPhilly. And before we get into today's show, I just want to thank the fine folks over at Cinch by AmeriGas. Go on over to their site or check the episode description, and you'll find cinch.com. That's CYNCH.com. If you've ever found yourself running low on propane, it's grilling season after all. What if I told you there's a way to get a brand new full tank of propane delivered to your home? Yes, that's right. Take the old spare that you have hanging out in your shed or the one that's hanging off your grill, ready to get filled. Now you don't have to lug it to the local supplier. Put it out on your front porch, on your doorstep, on your stoop, and let the fine folks at Cinch deliver and exchange that old propane tank for a brand new full one for just $10 with the promo code CrossingBroad. That's with a capital C and a capital B, all one word, CrossingBroad. And you can get your first tank for $10. Thanks to the fine folks at Cinch by AmeriGas. Anthony, how are you?
I'm wonderful, Russ. How about yourself?
You know, I'm feeling I'm feeling fine. I'm feeling fine.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not feeling, I feel kind of like my old propane tank, Anthony. I'm a little bit empty. And I was hoping that Chuck Fletcher and the Philadelphia Flyers were going to be the cinch to my Flyers fandom, and instead they're not going to deliver. And I'm a little bit sad, to be honest.
Yeah. Well, you should be. I'll tell you that this offseason has not been the kind of offseason that I kind of anticipated, that I kind of was hinted to me that was going to happen. And I guess it's still technically not over, but at this juncture, I think that you're looking at pretty much the roster, barring a major surprise coming up in the next, couple weeks. This is basically the team that the Flyers are going to go to battle with at the start of the season. And, is it better than last season? Yeah, I guess. Is it better enough? Certainly not. And then when you look at it from that perspective, where it's not better enough, then I think that this offseason might end up being a major disappointment, because there was the Flyers really kind of ate up a lot of the salary cap space that they had unnecessarily for what I think are marginal upgrades. Because if you really kind of look at the big moves that they made, Niskanen replaces Gudas. I think it's kind of a lateral move, and Niskanen's probably a little bit better than Gudas was, but he's older, and they swallowed some money on Gudas' salary. So that kind of washes out the difference to me, at least, in having the slightly better player. Justin Braun is certainly a better player than Andrew McDonald, but didn't have a very good year. Again, the Flyers gave up a little bit too much, I think, in that trade for a guy that's really a third-pair guy that's probably going to play second-pair minutes. And I'm not certain that he's the right guy for the second pair. And then Kevin Hayes, who I think he's a good player. Is he worth $50 million for 7 years? No, he's not. He's a tweener. He's better than a 3C, but he's not quite a 2C. And boy, I think they're relying on hope there that he can put up 2C numbers, and I don't see it. I just don't. I don't think he's that gifted offensively. Is he better than what they've had last year? Yes. But that's really it. Like, beyond that, like, what else? I mean, that's about it. Pitlick? I mean, come on. That's like the Dallas Stars were so excited to get rid of Pitlick that they didn't even tender an offer to Hartman after trading for him. Like 2 days later, it was like, yeah, see you later. Like they gave up Pitlick for that. So that tells you what they really think of Pitlick as a player. Like, I don't know, is he going to be on the Flyers' fourth line? Maybe. Who knows? The whole thing just. I'm not sitting here saying, Russ, that they should have blown us out of the water with like chasing a big name either in free agency or via a trade. I'm not saying that needed to happen. But if you were going to go the route that they went, I think there was a more affordable way to do it than what they did. And so therefore, they've now put themselves in the spot where they're pretty much coming back with the same team from last year with a couple of, like I said, marginal upgrades, while other teams in the conference got better, got stronger. And, does this put the Flyers in the race for the last playoff spot? Yeah, maybe, but we've been there before. I don't think that this is suddenly a team that's going to suddenly go, oh, wow, we've now stabilized and our top players are going to be superstars and we're going to be one of the best teams in the Metropolitan Division and, we're going to be in the playoffs easily and just jockeying for position. I don't see that. I just don't. So, I think that Flyers fans have a reason to be scratching their head right now here in mid-July as to what their team, why their team is where it is, and where it's headed. Like I don't see a plan. I just don't.
This team screwed the pooch. Call it what it is. Team walked into this offseason with $30+ million in cap space. We said that a major free agent signing was almost a requirement, right? Like it was something that they were going to at least have to be in the mood to do. It was going to have to be something that they were going to be willing to do. I jumped up and down for months about RFAs and offer sheets, and oddly enough, Montreal was the only one to put one out, although I don't really think that was a real offer. I think that was just working with an agent to try to scrounge some money out of Carolina, but that's a whole other thing for another day. The way that this team has gone about this offseason is arrogant, and it's desperate. And I've talked about this before about Kevin Hayes, and the fact that I think not only did they overpay him by a year, but I think just annual cap value. I think he got paid probably about $1 million more a year than I would have wanted him for. And I get that there weren't that many options out there that would have been realistic targets, but you're paying a guy $50 million over 7 years. You're pretty much paying him $1 million for every point he put up a season ago. He's broken 50 points once. Maybe he's going to be fine. I don't know. But like I've said this before, I think that the trade for his rights and the way that you had to overextend yourself on that contract to him spoke to desperation. And how I look at the rest of the offseason and the way that they tied up money in Braun and Niskanen and retaining salary in Gudas and overpaying for Hayes, there's an arrogance here that I don't think is warranted. There's an arrogance right now that I get from this team that, oh, you know what, this team just needed a better coach. Alain Vigneault is going to be able to come in and work magic. This team didn't come near what they should have been a year ago. And I get that Carter Hart played better, and we hope that he's going to be better than the hodgepodge of a healthier or unhealthy Brian Elliott and Michael Neuver experiment extravaganza. But to come back with what's effectively the same team, add Kevin Hayes, switch up your maybe second and third pair of defensemen at much higher cap hits, like what the hell are we doing? Like what? I'm not one to like sit back and say don't play the season, but like honestly, what do people think is going to happen? I've heard so many people say that like, oh, this is the year that Nolan Patrick breaks out, and most articles like that are about the Flyers taking that next step, it's like, well, if Nolan Patrick plays well as a 3C, which I like Nolan Patrick, but I've never seen the guy elevate his line mates to a point where I think he's going to go out and give you 45 to 60 points in a season. Certainly not at the 3C. And if he is able to take over the 2C, then what exactly does that say about Kevin Hayes and the way that that's worked out? I've seen that Travis Konechny's got to step up and improve his output for the team. I've seen people think that Oscar Lindblom is going to go for like 30 goals this year. I mean, look, it's entirely possible that like one of those things happens, but for you to have to bank on all three to just be more than like an 8th seed in this conference, like I don't get it. I really don't. I genuinely don't understand what they're doing.
So you called it arrogance, and I'm not 100% sure I would use the same word. But I see what you're saying. I don't think you're off, too far off with it. I think that they look at it and think that, okay, so we made a run with the team that we had last year, and then it ultimately fell short because it was just unsustainable for such a long period of time. They dug themselves too deep of a hole. Although don't tell the St. Louis Blues that. But ultimately that's what happened. So I think that they look at it and say, okay, well, let's see if now we have a significant upgrade to the coaching staff, if that changes things at the beginning of the season. And then if not, then we can address what we need to address in season. I don't know. I would take that approach. I think that that's kind of what they're doing. They really built up, when you really look at it, they really built up the Phantoms with adding a lot of players with, marginal NHL experience. But I think it was more so because, they want to give the younger players an opportunity to show that they can play at that level and then say, okay, if we need one of you guys to jump up and play in the NHL later in the season, we can do that, and fix things from within and then add, pieces to the fringe on the outside because we'll be in the race a lot longer, or we'll be in the race the whole time, not drifting to the worst record in the league in early January. So I really think that that's their approach. I don't agree with it. I don't think it's arrogant. I think it's misguided. I think more needed to happen to change, the culture of certain players. There's just way too many ifs with this team. And a lot of it is players that they brought in, because they're, I'm not as, I know a lot of people were anti-Niskanen. I'm not anti-Niskanen. I think that, he was a key player for the Washington Capitals when they won the Stanley Cup in the summer of 2018. That said, he didn't have a great 2018-19, so we're counting on a bounce back. Is it possible? I think so, but it's still something that you have to hope happens. Same thing with Justin Braun. Have to hope he bounces back. Same thing with Kevin Hayes. Have to hope he improves to be the player that you need him to be a number 2C and to justify a 7-year, $50 million contract. You need other players who are still on this roster to have better seasons. You need a better James Van Riemsdyk. You need a better Travis Konechny. You need a better Nolan Patrick. You need a better Shane Gostisbehere. You need Carter Hart to not have a sophomore slump. All of these things are just certainly dangerous possibilities. And while they all won't come to fruition, nor will they all be the complete opposite and be a disaster. There'll be some that hit, some that miss. Is that enough to then make this team a legitimate contender in the Eastern Conference? And I say no, because I look at the teams that are already in the East that are really good, Tampa and Boston, and you see what Carolina did this year. They're no slouch. And you see that the teams that got better or were pretty good already, the Islanders were a decent team. The Capitals are a decent team. The
Rangers just
the
added
Rangers
Panarin.
The Rangers got better. The Devils got better. Like, there's a lot in the East that suddenly Florida got better. That's
all these teams got better. Like we're tiptoeing around this. The rest of the conference got better, and the Flyers decided that instead of going out and making impact moves and making good moves around the fringes and going and splashing capital that they had available on hand, they decided that everybody else in the league was wrong, and that the fan base was wrong, and that people who analyzed the team and watched the team and broke down film on the team, everybody's wrong. This team is 20 wins or 20 points or 25 points better than what they put out last season. And you're tying a whole hell of a lot of stuff to your young players taking that next step. And it to all go right in the same time. It's not going to happen. I don't understand. Like, we talked at the end of the season about like the need to support young players with good veterans. I don't see that. Like, I see that on the defensive side. Like, I think that Braun and Niskanen could do a solid enough job as we continue to look for that next level of progression for like the Travis Sanheims, the Andrew Myers, and to some extent like the Ivan Provorovs. Hopefully, like being able to kind of level him off so he's not as much of a roller coaster as he was last season. And by the way, he's still not signed. But like when you look at your top three lines, what exactly has this team done to get better other than overpay Kevin Hayes? This is the problem that I'm running into. Like, are they not only so high that, like, Lindblom, Konechny are going to improve that, like, is there a thought here that Morgan Frost or Isaac Ratcliffe are ready to go and take, like, the third-line right-wing position, that they're going to seize the day? Like, I don't get it. I genuinely don't. And I feel like they screwed this up. And like, I get that you're saying it was misguided. I genuinely think it's arrogance in that, like, there is a smart way to go about this offseason, and I think that they like really effed it up. The only thing that I can say that Chuck Fletcher did well this offseason is I think they had a good draft. I think they worked the margins well. They got good value, especially like mid-rounds in the draft. I think that's like the one thing they did well. But this whole free agency debacle, this RFA debacle, to me, like, this is one of the most disappointing off seasons for any Philadelphia sports team. And especially for a franchise that saw massive apathy set in with this fan base. You needed to go out and do something to sell tickets. You needed to do something to get back your passionate fan, get your casual fan who fell away from this team because of how poor they were, and to even try to go and get a little bit, just a tiny share, of that 4-for-4 fan, of getting people back in on this team to at least care. And they didn't do it. And like, sure, if they start winning, if next season they start off on a tear and they're like 10-2-3 to start the season, sure, people are going to be interested. They're going to be excited. But you've blown it. Like, to me, you've blown any opportunity that you had to get a real jump on what this season coming up is, and to kind of wash off that stink of last season.
Well, that's some fire there, Russ. Look, I get it. I get that you're agitated, and I don't think that you're completely wrong. I'm on board with you that they missed an opportunity here, and that's just my analysis of it. That said, I'm not ready to blow up the season, because they might be right. We could be wrong, and they might be right. So we got to wait and see. I still don't think that the end result is going to end up being different than what we're saying right now. I don't want to be full of piss and vinegar until November. I think it's a little early to be that way, because again, anything can happen. There's a lot of things that we don't know about, that maybe there is that young player who's ready to go, who's going to come in and set the world on fire, and we're like, oh geez, we didn't even think of that, and they know about it, because they know their own prospects better than we do. Who knows? I don't see it. If you're asking me today to where the Flyers rank in their division, I probably have them 6th, maybe even further down. Like 6th might be optimistic, but I'm not ready to go hellfire and brimstone against the team until I actually see what it looks like and see how they're playing. Maybe they believe in in Alain Vigneault. Maybe they buy into this. Who knows? I mean, you've seen it happen, where teams are not the best teams on paper and yet somehow find a way to win, because they've bought in, to the process that they're doing. Maybe that's here. And it happens in hockey more than any other sport. Maybe that's why mediocre teams win sometimes. I mean, what the St. Louis Blues did this year was pretty freaking amazing, and isn't going to happen very regularly. But they were the worst team in hockey, bought into what the interim coach was selling, and rallied around it and believed in themselves. And there's no doubt they were not the best team on paper coming into the playoffs, or even in the playoffs, or even into the in each round. I thought that they were not the best team on paper, but they played the best team game, and it got them a Stanley Cup championship. So not to say that this Flyers team is going to be the St. Louis Blues next year, but they can certainly exceed expectations if, in fact, they do buy into the coach a little bit and play above brand. But even that, I don't know if that's enough to excite you. Like, is that enough? Like, if I'll say this to you right now, Russ, if the Flyers come out next season and get off to a good start, and we're looking, we go into, flip the calendar to 2020, and it's January, and we're recording an episode of Snow the Goalie, and we're talking about who the Flyers could add at the trade deadline that, could help them in the playoffs, are you still as pissed off about this offseason? I don't know. I'm not saying that that's going to happen, but how would you react if that was the case?
I don't know.
Right. I mean,
I don't know.
That's my point. Like, you're saying I don't know, and I'm going to cut you off right there, because even if that's the case, that you and I are not going to believe that this is a team that can make a run to the Stanley Cup. Like, we don't think that that's there. We don't think that element exists in the players that are on this roster. And so without that...
And by the way, that's like part of the problem with I understand why you brought up St. Louis like you did, but that is such an anomaly, right? For things to break the way they did, for there being the worst team in hockey with an interim coach... and like that's the kind of thing that drives me up. This is like in any sport, when somebody like points to an anomaly. Oh, well, Tom Brady was drafted 199 overall, so you never know. You've got to take a risk at that pick because Tom Brady came from there, so it has to work out. No. You're pointing out an anomaly. In the NBA, you talk about a second-round draft pick, and people lose their minds. It's like, oh, well, this player, they're all taking the second round. It doesn't matter. You're talking about a few guys. The vast majority never make an impact in the league. I get so sick and tired of like people pursuing these like narratives in their mind to like try to rationalize when a team doesn't do something that they probably should have done, and they kind of like pass it off as, well, you can't necessarily say that the Flyers don't have a chance, because who would have given Columbus a chance against Tampa Bay? Tampa Bay is an obviously much more talented team. They were a more gifted team. They were an overall better team than Columbus was going into the postseason, but look how things broke for them. I would rather be the Tampa Bay than the Columbus, because 9 out of 10 times Columbus loses that series, right? And I feel like this, God, they had a chance to become a top 3 team in the conference. They had a chance to supplement some of the veteran leaders that we're used to seeing on this team, and use them as a means to try to help the young talent develop and to take that next step. And to me, they screwed it up. And it's not just like losing out on being a potential contender. It's that I feel like in some way they're going to rationalize this as anything can happen in hockey. I would rather go in with the 70% chance of you being a top 4 team than being like the 10% chance that you advance out of the first round in the postseason as a 7 seed. Call me crazy.
You're not crazy. You're not. It's what I'm saying. But I don't necessarily think that we need to be as passionately pissed off at this point. That's all. I just think that we owe a new coach an opportunity to show us. If Alain Vigneault thinks he can win with this team, let's see it. I don't think we give them a long. I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, let's give them a season so they can learn the system. And no. Come out first, beginning of the season, hit the ground running, and show us. Because I'll tell you what, if this team gets off to another mediocre to bad start, then there's a major problem with this organization. Major problem.
Alain Vigneault is a wonderful coach, and I think he's going to be able to coach these guys up. But the man is not a miracle worker, right? And if somehow this team hits the All-Star break and they're a top 3 team in the conference, save this tape and throw it in my face. Because then Alain Vigneault has done something that nobody thought could be done. He will have somehow put together a team and a system that has allowed all these young guys to take that next step. And if it works out, I will be over the moon. I don't question the coach. I question everything that he's been given. Tell me, like, as a Flyers fan out there, tell me what exactly the front office has done to make you feel better about the way that Alain Vigneault is going to have to approach coaching this team. What has Chuck Fletcher done to actually make this team markedly better? Again, other than overpaying for Kevin Hayes.
He hasn't.
So I don't, and like then I almost feel bad for Vigneault in a sense where it's like I think he's gonna do a good job, but like if this team ends up being a 7 seed, people are gonna do what they do. They're gonna say this is an indictment on the coach. It was a bad hire. I don't necessarily think it was. I just don't know how you're supposed to turn. I don't even know. I don't even have a good analogy. I'm too pissed off for it.
All right,
I was in a really good mood. And then this happened.
Let's save your venom for the next episode, because our episodes are going to start getting interesting as we're going to be joining up with some other friends for some episodes this summer. So stay tuned for information on that. We're going to be bringing in some guests from the Philadelphia hockey world. I know that's the thing that you've been teasing everybody about all week. So we have some guests coming up for future episodes here in July and August, prior to the start of training camp in September. So we look forward to getting together with those hockey people and having some fun talking about the Flyers.
We'll promote the crap out of it. We will promote the crap out of it on Twitter.
But in the interim, what we want you to check out is what's coming up next on this episode. Is something that Russ and I recorded a month ago, and it's actually really cool. I actually tweeted out about it earlier on Monday the 8th. We partnered up with Let's Go Blues Radio in St. Louis and did a podcast with them because why the Blues and not any other team? Well, it was actually their idea. Jeff Ponder, who is the host of their show, had an idea to team up with a podcast in each city in the NHL and record an episode with everybody and then put them out as their summer programming. So that's what they did. And of course, they picked Russ and I to represent the Philadelphia Flyers community. And we did.
Apparently he Googled the Only Flyers podcast and we came up.
And so it was pretty cool, and we thought it was a really good episode. As a matter of fact, they thought it was such a good episode. Originally, they had us scheduled to go, sometime in late August or mid-August, because, heck, there's no real rivalry between the Blues and the Flyers. But then after our interview, it was like, that was so good, they moved us up towards the beginning of the group. So ours debuted on their podcast on Monday the 8th, and as such now we are adding the audio from our interview on that show that will be now here, where we talk a lot about connections between the Flyers and the Blues over the course of their both teams' history in the NHL. So I think without further ado, Russ, because it's long, it's about an hour and a half, or hour and 20 minutes at least, and we've already recorded for 25, 26 minutes here. So people don't, they're going to have a 2-hour episode to listen to. I think we should just jump right into it and get to it, and then let everybody know what we're doing on social media with our next episode.
Sounds good, Anthony. All right, without further ado, here is our crossover episode with Let's Go Blues Radio.
And we are talking Philadelphia Flyers today. I'm joined by Russ and Anthony from the Snow The Goalie podcast and crossingbroad.com, which is Philadelphia's most irreverent sports blog. We'll get to them here in a minute, but first I wanted to read off some of the important stats that go along with the Blues versus the Philadelphia Flyers in their long history. The Blues' all-time record against the Flyers, 152 games played, 47 wins, 85 losses, 17 ties, and 4 overtime losses. Blues not looking good on that all-time record. I'm guessing it's mostly because of those 70s battles when the Flyers were on top of the world and Blues were struggling to make the playoffs, but we'll get to this in a little bit. First meeting between these teams, October 18th, 1967. This was in Philadelphia, and it was a 2-1 loss for the Blues. Another important note between the Blues and Flyers, the Blues had their first, actually, I guess this is the Flyers' first playoff game and first playoff series as well, was in 1968. April 4th was the date. The Blues won that one in the game, 1-0, and also won the series, obviously on their way to losing in the Stanley Cup final to the Montreal Canadiens. Another important note to get to, which I doubt my guests remember because I doubt they were born at this time. Red Berenson's 6-goal game came against the Philadelphia Flyers. So that's an important note in Blues history. November 7th, 1968 in Philadelphia, and that was a 8-0 Blues drubbing of the Flyers. I know, again, we all remember that one so well, but again, that's an important note in Blues history, 6-goal game, one of the many players that has reached that feat. So again, Russ and Anthony from the Snow the Goalie podcast and crossingbroad.com. Thank you, fellas, for joining me today.
Thanks for
you're
having
welcome,
us.
Jeff. Thanks for having us. Yeah, and by the way, I wasn't even alive when that Red Berenson 6-goal game.
I figured that.
You sure you didn't cover that? You positive?
I know. A lot of people think I was alive. No, I was not alive for that. I was still.
You were not.
Years
You were
away.
not writing for online content at that point.
No.
Anthony, how many years away were you from being born?
That happened in 72?
68.
68.
68. 6. I was still 6 years
Wow.
before I arrived on the mortal coil.
Took me 22 more years to grace the earth with my.
God, I'm
amazing
terrible
presence.
with math. Let me see. Carry the one. Would have been 20. Good Lord, I'm so bad with math. I was born in 85, so let's put it like that.
I was born in 90.
Well, there you go.
Yeah, Jeff, we had a thing at the press box this year where we were trying to figure out who the youngest person was in the press box at the Flyers game, and Russ was the only person in the press box born in the 1990s.
Wow,
It
look
was
at
sad.
that.
Setting records.
It was sad.
Hey, that's good for you, but sad for everyone else.
Yeah, it was. I remember when I first started as a beat writer, I was the youngest beat writer at the time, and it was great. Like I was like, the new guy, and now I'm like an old man up there. It's ridiculous.
So
I don't know
you're
where
the
the
youngest
time's
beat
gone.
writer. So let's see, you were probably what 10 years old, 12 years old?
No, I started covering the team officially. I mean, I started covering them in 99, 2000, but as an official beat writer in 2004. So at the time I was 27.
That's pretty good. That's good.
Yeah.
99, 2000. So wait, does that mean that you saw the longest playoff game in history?
I was not present for that. I was in 99, 2000. I was only covering home games, and that game took place in Pittsburgh.
In Pittsburgh, right.
The great story about that is that there was a beat writer for a newspaper in Wilmington, Delaware, who was covering the game in Pittsburgh, and he his deadline had passed because the game ran so long, and he decided the heck with it because the deadline had passed. He was driving home, and he drove all the way home to Wilmington, Delaware, and made it home before the game ended. He then promptly got fired because his bosses said, "What do you mean you left early? You still have to cover the game." So he promptly lost his job after that. But that was a classic game.
Wow, I
5
have not
overtimes.
heard that.
Yeah.
Russ,
Great story.
you're a young man. Do you remember that game?
A little bit.
Yeah,
just a little bit. I remember waking up a few times trying to keep up with it and falling back asleep because I was how old, Anthony?
That was 2000. So you were 10.
10.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Life was hard. Life was hard then.
I actually have told the story a couple times on this show from that game because we always joke whenever it goes 2 overtimes. We're like, all right, this is going to beat the Philadelphia-Pittsburgh game. And, I was a kid. I fell asleep in the first overtime, so I was 15, and woke back up in the third overtime and was just like, this game's still on? Is this a replay? And it took me a while to realize, like, holy cow, this is still the same game. So I missed a little bit of it, but I was able to stay up for, 2 more overtimes.
Yeah, it was
great.
a pretty memorable. My daughter was actually born 2 days after that. I was at the next game. I had to skip covering the next game because my daughter was born, and I remember the game started in Philadelphia that day at 1 p.m. and 2 p.m. and my daughter was born at 1:58. And so my daughter arrives, I hold her, we take the quick picture, and I looked at the nurse. I said, "Can you put the TV on?" There's a playoff game coming on. I got to watch it.
Oh, man. I thought you were going to say she was born at 1:58, so you rushed out at 1:59 and still made it to the game on time.
No, I didn't go to the game. I didn't cover the game. That would have been really impressive, but I got the nurse to put the game on the TV.
The worst story that I have about when my wife gave birth, we were our son was 3.5 weeks early, and so she's laying there, and we're told, yeah, the baby's coming. We're going to go ahead and go along with getting the pregnancy going. And I looked right at my wife in the eye, and I go, so I got a hockey game in like 3 hours. Should I call and tell them I'm going to miss it? And she just gave me the dirtiest death stare, and I'm like, yeah, I think I got the answer. I'm good. I tell it to people, and they're like,
you went to the game.
Oh yeah, of course.
Yeah.
I was, honey, I'm just going to go to the bathroom. I'll be right back. Oh man, yeah, that was one of the worst death stares I've ever gotten from her. And I tell that story to people, and they're like, "You actually asked?" And I'm like, "It was one of those things where I was sleep deprived and I was asking, but I wasn't really asking." But in her eyes, I was asking. So
she got up and walked it off, right? Because
yeah,
because it's hockey,
Oh, that's right, honey. You just wait right there. You're going to be drugged out anyway. It'll be like I'm here. I'll just put up a blow up of myself, put a picture on it. Hold it pan. You'll be fine.
Honey, Ian LaPerriere took a puck to the face in the playoffs in a game that the Flyers were beating the Devils. You can at least get up after, bringing a child into this world.
Exactly.
You
yeah, you could just be tough like LaPerriere. Come on. That's a player I didn't put in our outline, by the way.
That's right. By the way,
LaPerriere played for both.
Should probably do a just as good of a job coaching the penalty kill as he's done for the last 3 years. But, anyway.
There you go. I like that. Well, guys, let's go ahead. We're already kind of into it, but let's get really into it. The first thing that I want to talk about, and this is, again, a moment in Blues history that even people who were not around at this time, including myself, do remember. That is the big brawl in Philadelphia between the Blues and Flyers. This was on January 6th, 1972. And if you look this up on YouTube, there is video of it. There's actually a couple. There's a couple articles you can look up too. I think the one I sent you guys was from, I want to say it was from St. Louis Post-Dispatch, but I could be wrong on that. But either way, let me ask you guys before we kind of get into the story of what happened here. Is this something that Flyers fans, it's kind of in their lore as well? Or is this just something that crazy fight-loving Blues fans seem to remember?
Well, I'll take this one, Russ, because I know that it's more my time period. But it's not as talked about as much now as it was many years ago, Jeff. But I will say this: the reason that the Broad Street Bullies ever existed was the St. Louis Blues,
right? And
Ed Snyder was tired of the Plager brothers going around and beating up on the Flyers players. I think Picard also was another guy that kept beating up on the Flyers, and he got so sick of it that he said, "I'm going to put a team together that will never have that happen to them again." And so, the Flyers Blues rivalry back then was legit. I mean, they were the two best teams in that expansion division. I mean, imagine that. Imagine doing that today, where the league expands by 6 teams and they put all 6 expansion teams in the same division.
Right.
And so the Blues and the Flyers were the two teams that were the best of those expansion teams, and they hated each other. And so any time that they could get together, once the Flyers became, more physical team, anytime they got together, it was a bloodbath. And so that one ends up in the stands, and it's just crazy to think. I mean, if you fast forward, 20 years, when was Malice in the Palace? Was that 2003? So 30 years,
something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So you fast forward to that, and oh my God, everybody's in shock. What a horrible thing. The athletes went into the crowd and fought with the fans. And yet you look back at the Blues Flyers situation that took place, and everybody looks back on it fondly. Like, that's a fun story. It's amazing the difference in mentality between hockey and the rest of society.
Yeah, it's funny because, obviously this wasn't the Blues or Flyers, but Mike Milbury beating a man with his own shoe. We look at that now and we laugh, and we're like, oh my God, hockey is so crazy.
Oh,
if that happened today,
yep.
Oof, it's crazy. So anyway, so the story behind this one, for those that don't know, at least this is told in the St. Louis media, maybe it's different in Philly, but there was a beer dumped on the head of Blues coach Al Arbor by a mad Flyers fan, Bob Plager, who was mentioned here by Anthony. Bob Plager heads into the stands, fought Flyers fans, and Blues player John Arbor, who was not in any relation to Al Arbor, was hit and needed 40 stitches. Al Arbor, John Arbor, Floyd Thompson, and Phil Roboito, as I like to call him, were handcuffed and carted off to jail, all arraigned on assault charges. So obviously this was a big deal. And like I said, I think maybe why it's remembered so well in St. Louis is because Bob Plager is still an active member of the organization. He's at every game. He's always out with fans, and you always see him getting pictures with fans all the time, even Cardinals games, Blues games. He's always here. So I think, when you hear him tell stories of the old days, this is one that I think he brings up probably more than others. And, you mentioned Ed Snyder, and obviously he was a prominent member of the organization in Philly for so long. Is there anyone else in Flyers lore that was there then that's still around the organization that might be telling stories like this?
Oh my, yes.
Yeah,
absolutely. The Flyers are notorious for bringing back their own into some capacity. So Bob the Hound Kelly, who I think arrived in Philly in 1970. He's like an ambassador for the team. He goes around and does some fan stuff every game, and takes pictures and all that stuff, just much in the same way that Bob Plager does. And he is when I worked for the team, our desks were right next to each other. We had two cubes that were connected. And Hound told more stories from that era. And he said the most memorable thing that he said about that game was once the Blues players went up into the stands, like it was almost as if the roles reversed. Like the Flyers players who were all angry and frustrated and mad, and they started watching, and the fans were the ones that were fighting, and the players were rooting the fans on. From the ice, which was kind of funny. He said, we just stopped. We just stopped worrying about it and just watched. So he was there for that game, and that was a great story that he used to tell. I'm just trying to think. I guess Joe Watson was still there. Russ, right? He's still around. Jimmy Watson, although he's not down with the Flyers all the time, but he lives in my neighborhood, and he still tells stories from that era. So
weird flex, but okay. I'm just trying to wrap my head around something really quick. So this is a thing that St. Louis is proud of.
Isn't it weird? It's weird, isn't it?
It is. Like a bunch of tough hockey players went up into the stands and got busted open and got arrested. That doesn't sound like a winning story to me.
I mean, I would imagine that if you talk to somebody right after this happened, it was probably, oh my God, this is so embarrassing. This is, why would our players do this? But I think now with it being so far away, and like I said, Bob Plager is the most prominent member of the Blues organization. Everybody knows who he is here in St. Louis, and he's always telling these stories to fans. I mean, this one comes up and among many, many others. And I think people just hear him tell it, and it's, oh, what a great story. What a great moment in Blues history. But when you really look at what happened, it's actually probably more embarrassing than anything else.
We get killed for throwing snowballs at Santa Claus. I don't remember there being like a Wednesday night rivalry game where Doc Emmerich comes in and he says, "Oh, and don't forget about the time that Al Arbor went up into the stands and he just absolutely unloaded down to Pierre." "Oh, yeah, Doc. Sidney Crosby was there. Love Sidney Crosby. Back to you." "All right, well, scores!"
Russ had to get his impressions.
Never. I don't ever remember this being a thing to lead NBC, right? Like, is this like why would anybody want to bring this up? I don't get it. I don't.
It's great. It's a great story, Russ.
It's lovely. But okay, so to answer your question from way long ago, is this something that Philadelphia Flyers fans think of or hold in lore? Speaking, I guess, on behalf of the younger contingent, I would say no. The fight that I think of is Flyer Senators that broke.
All right, with Ray Emery, right?
Well, that was
it was with Ray Emery.
Yeah.
It was that was one of my favorite games I ever covered. Ever. There were fights within the media down in the locker room after the game. Bobby Clark went after John Muckler, or not John, Jacques Martin, who was the coach of the Senators at the time, in the hallway, called him a gutless puke. It was great. It was so good. It was so good.
So like that's what I think of.
Yeah,
I don't
that
think
was
this Blues thing. I think
was
this
awesome.
I mean, it's interesting, but I don't know.
I would say that's probably the word used in St. Louis, is that it's interesting. It's maybe not heralded as a great moment, but it's something that all Blues fans have heard the stories. They know what happened, and it's just kind of a funny footnote in Blues history, because you don't hear that often. Like I said, in St. Louis, we hear about this one, and then we hear about the Mike Milbury incident, and that's about it, which that's a good one, too. Let me ask you, since you brought up your excellent impersonations there, Russ. Let me ask.
Don't egg him on, Jeff.
I got to ask you one question about Mike Emmerich. What's the best adjective he uses? Catawampus?
Yeah, you know what? Catawampus bothers me. Like, I've heard catawampus, catty corner. Why can't everybody just agree? It's like it's a diagonal, right? Like, I don't get it. I don't know. I think Emmerich's got so many good ones. It'd be unfair to him to pin him into a corner.
It's knifed into the corner.
Yeah, that is exactly what he said. Knifed into the corner. He does say that. I hate to have a quick little sidebar here, Jeff, but when Russ and I do the show, we don't get to see each other. We just talk through another podcasting system, so we hear each other. We don't get to see each other like we are here on the Google Hangout. And this is the first time I'm actually getting to see Russ. And with that mic screen that he has, he looks like Wilson W. Wilson from Home Improvement. Like I cannot see his face behind that thing. Like I'm like fascinated by it. I'm losing. I can't even focus on the conversation because all I see is his nose and his eyes, and I can't see anything else. It's
Russ,
just driving me crazy.
You need to give him some sage advice right now.
It's a level of mystery,
I'm sorry. I digress. I didn't mean to go off on that. It was such a distraction. I just had to point it out now, so that everybody can pay attention.
That's good pod, Anthony. Thanks for that contribution. That's exactly what St. Louis Blues fans wanted to learn about the Blues and Flyers rivalry.
Yeah, that's exactly what it brought you guys on the show for, is to talk about Home Improvement. So did you guys see the episode with Jill's dad? Jill, was that her name in that show?
Yeah, it was Jill. It was her fault too. It was her fault that the show went off the air. If you remember,
was it really?
She wanted to walk away from the show. They didn't want to kill off her character. Yeah, she
wanted more. Didn't she want more money?
I think it was that, and then it didn't happen, and so she wanted off the show. They want to write her off, so they were like, "All right." It's kind of sad. Whatever happened to that? Whatever happened to that Tim Allen guy? Never made much of his career, did he?
No, nothing at all.
He needed that show. Whatever happened to Jonathan Taylor Thomas? JTT.
Oh, here we go.
She was like the number one child actor, and dude fell off the face of the earth,
Yeah, he's kind of gone. He left the spotlight. Zachary Ty Bryan was in one of the Fast and the Furious. And that's really the last time I saw him, too.
Child actors don't usually last, boys. Not many of them carry on into adulthood.
It's kind of like Braden Shen. It's like he had a really good time. There was like that one good year, and then he went away, and we forgot about him. He's Jonathan Taylor Thomas. I think St. Louis fans, though, they probably like him a little bit more.
I was going to say, I think we really enjoy Braden Shen with what he's brought this team. So I think we remember him a little differently.
Oh, he was a good player.
He was
he was a good player. I mean, and he was a good guy. I mean, I liked talking to him. I mean, so the whole family. I even like talk to his brother Luke, who was a terrible player. But
hey, he was great value for James Van Riemsdyk. All right,
yeah.
Flyers got the better end of that deal.
Yeah, absolutely. But no, I like Braden. I do. I'm rooting for him, and I'm rooting for Chief. It's funny because usually you don't really, once your team's out, you don't really care what happens the rest of the way. But I'm sick and tired of Boston winning stuff and have such a great relationship with Chief, and he's just an awesome guy. So I'm rooting for your boys, Jeff. To take it home here.
As I've done, with every one of these episodes, I'll go ahead and timestamp this. This is we are recording this on June 4th. This is the night after the Blues had just won Game 4. So I'm not sure when this is going to air, but the series is at 2-2. So when he says he's rooting for them, that's because the Stanley Cup Final in our time, in our past, I guess, is going on at the moment. So hopefully the Blues.
Bran Stark actually just warged back here and saw this, and he's not going to tell anyone what happens. He can see it. He could change the past, but he won't do it. Just wants to do the thing.
It's funny because Scott Bakula is from St. Louis, and he was at the game last night. So I instantly, when I started saying that, started thinking about Quantum Leap.
Quantum Leap, man. Absolutely.
Is it just me, or does Scott Bakula look like the human personification of Alf? Maybe it's just me.
There's a lot of great references on this show. I'm loving this.
This is what we do. This is all we do.
So I do want to talk to you guys about, let's go ahead and get into this because we're talking about the Stanley Cup Final here. I'm not sure what exact area you guys are in Philadelphia, but obviously in St. Louis, there's a landmark there now for us, the Jack's New Year's Brigade Clubhouse, which is where the whole Gloria thing began.
Yep.
Have you guys ever been there, and how close do you live to Jack's New Year's Brigade?
Well, Russ lives out in the sticks. I mean, he lives so far away from the city. He's not even from Philly. I mean, he's from where, like, what, Schuylkill County, somewhere like northeastern Pennsylvania, somewhere.
Yeah,
like
that's it, Anthony. Good county knowledge out of you. This is
whatever.
This is good.
Yeah, but no, I grew up in the city, Jeff. I live out in the burbs now, but I'm not that far. I mean, if I had to say how far of a ride is it from my house to Jack's, is probably 20-25 minutes. That's right down. It's not too far from the stadium area. And so let me ask you this. Do you guys know about the Mummers Parade? Do you know what the Mummers Parade is in St. Louis?
I'm sure there is some, but I do not. So please educate me.
Okay, so Jack's. So what Jack's is? Every year on New Year's Day in Philadelphia, there's this tradition where there is a parade that includes judging of various groups. Some of them are comics. When I say comics, they dress up as clowns wearing women's dresses. Yeah, and they march through the street doing all different kinds of like weird dances and themed things. And then there's like string bands, and they have like a little show that they do. And then there's fancy brigades and guys wearing feathers, like big feathered, like what would you call them, Russ? I guess there's these big circular plumes on their backs, on their shoulders. It's just kind of a weird thing. It's totally Philadelphia.
Well, I'm gonna give people a thing they might remember from 2016. The Mummers Parade is where there was the group that came out and they did the mocking of Caitlyn Jenner, where they had the Wheaties box of Bruce Jenner and then the Fruit Loops box with Caitlyn Jenner's picture on it. And those people, they made it to national news, and then they had to go to sensitivity training. So that's the Mummers Parade.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, well, I know what that is.
So Jack's Brigade, they're one of the comics, and traditionally the comics, they go first because these people have been up all night celebrating the new year. And let's say that they probably are still throwing back a few beverages from the night before while they're marching in the parade at 9 a.m. Mm-hmm. And they had won. They won their division, their comic division. They were named the best comic division this year. So they had a big party at Jack's Brigade, and the party was still going on several days later, and it led into the Eagles-Bears playoff game, which was a famous playoff game because of the double doink, right? The missed field goal by the Bears that hit both the upright and the crossbar, and the Eagles advance with the upset win of the Bears. Well, that's the night that it's taking place there, and lo and behold, I guess a few of the Blues players ended up in Jack's bar there in South Philly the night prior to the game, and they kept playing Gloria in between every time there was a TV commercial. Rather than play the commercials in the bar so that everybody had to listen to this annoying commercials, they would turn on music, and for whatever reason, Gloria just kept playing repeatedly. And I guess that's where the legend began, because Jordan Binnington makes his debut the next night at a game we were at, Russ.
Yes, we were.
It was boring as hell. The Blues won 3-0, I think it was. Yeah. Binnington makes his NHL debut with a shutout, and the two worst teams in hockey, one went one way and the other, well, they both actually were playing well for a while, but the Flyers kind of fell off the table while the Blues just kept on going from there.
Yeah, that's that's a story told here now. It's like it's lore. I mean, just like the Flyers Blues brawl in 1972. I mean, everyone kind of knows the story now, knowing about the bar itself and why there was a party going on like that. That's kind of a cool little nugget for Blues fans who didn't know that. So what? I mean, let me ask you guys then. I mean, again, I don't know outside of South Philly, outside of Jack's New Year's Brigade, what it's like for Flyers fans. Are they all, is it like a Philadelphia has kind of adopted the Blues, or is it more like what you guys are saying, nobody wants to see Boston win?
I'd like to romanticize this for you and tell you that we've adopted St. Louis as our team, but you don't want our bad luck. You don't want our city's bad fortune. You don't want this black cloud looming over your team.
We already have that.
Really, it's just for the love of God, beat Boston. I mean, until the Boston Celtics imploded on themselves, vomited on themselves, got diarrhea on themselves, and watched their team implode by a point guard who believes the earth is flat, there was a chance that Boston had the ability to go out and win all four major championships. Now, if you're a soccer fan like me, you could also point to the fact that they have one horrible team. They have to sacrifice one team, the Revs, which they may as well just shoot into the sun. Other than that, they were very much poised and a favorite in some ways to advance to the finals or to the championship in each sport. So, seeing Boston in another championship and seeing the billboard that went up that said, like, it's been 141 days since we last won a title. I mean, I know that we don't get to know how this plays out. And in my heart of hearts, I want St. Louis to win. And hopefully by the time this airs, St. Louis will have won. But if they didn't, I will hate St. Louis forever. Because I cannot watch Boston win another title. I despise. I've never been to the city of Boston. I hear it's nice. I know the people aren't that great. I know their teams are horrible. And I know their fans are borderline racist and terrible. But aside from that, I'm sure Boston's a really lovely place to be. I'm just not a big fan. And I'm not a fan of the winning, and I'm not a fan of the arrogance. You know, you win a title, that's great. I think Boston's had enough winning. I think we can start to spread the love around a little bit.
I agree. I'd like to see. It's funny because people talk about outside of Philadelphia how bad Philly fans are, but I'm like, they don't even hold a candle for me to Boston Bruins and Boston Red Sox fans. Those people are more annoying than anyone in sports.
No, you're absolutely right. And I will, as someone who's traveled the country and been to every major professional sports city in this country, I would agree that the worst fans in America are Boston fans. There's not even a close second. And I'm not somebody who always defends the Philadelphia fan. I know that there's a real inferiority complex here amongst fans when we get criticized, and I think that Philadelphia fans deserve a lot of the criticism that they get. But the fact of the matter is they aren't even close to as bad as fans in Boston are. But I'm rooting for St. Louis, Jeff, for a whole different reason. It's great. We have some connections with the city of Philadelphia and St. Louis, with this team, but I have a personal relationship with Craig Berube. He's one of the guys who kind of helped indoctrinate me into the world of the NHL. The very first year that I was on the beat an official beat writer. Like I said, I was doing some part-time stuff before it, but was 2004, 2005. Well, if you recall, that was the lockout, right? So there was no NHL season that year. So what ended up happening is the newspaper that I worked for at the time said, well, just go cover the Phantoms, who were the American Hockey League team. They played in Philadelphia at the time. They're now in Lehigh Valley. They were in Glens Falls, New York for a few years. Now they're now in the Lehigh Valley. But they were in Philadelphia at the time. And so I went there and they made me travel, which no one had ever done in the AHL. No writer had ever traveled for an entire year in the American Hockey League. And here I am traveling. And I traveled with the team a number of times. And I got to know all the coaches and all the players on that team. And Craig Berube was an assistant coach with that team. And we're in December by this point, so I gotten to know them a little bit. And there was a trip that went from Philly was playing Hershey, the Hershey Bears on New Year's Eve, and then they had to drive on a bus from Hershey to Albany, New York, which is like a 5-hour bus ride after the game. And so when we ring in the new year, 2005, we're on the highway somewhere on a dark bus, and I'm sitting across from Berube, and he reaches over to me right before midnight, and he hands me a beer, and I'm like, "You sure?" He's like, "Yeah, take it." And so I have it, and we start talking, and he goes, "Hey man, it's New Year's Eve. We got 24 more of these under there. Just rip them open and have as many as you want." And me and Chief for 5 hours sat there, had beers, and just talked about life. And from there we became friends. And he's just a great guy. I know you guys love him as a coach, and I liked him as a coach here. I didn't think he got a fair shake as a Flyers coach. I think he was kind of rushed out of town, unfortunately. But you got a great guy, a really good coach, really smart coach, and I think he's going to be there with you guys for a while and really help that team have an opportunity to win, several times.
Yeah, you're talking about what how he's rushed out of town. That's something I was wanting to ask you guys about with him, because you look at his record, 2 years with Philly, he had a 75, 58, and 28 record, which not bad, honestly, for him to be let go. I mean, that's still over 500. Obviously, there was the 1 year you made the playoffs, lost in the first round. But why was he let go? Why was for just, what shits and giggles, whatever you want to speculate on, go ahead, because I think that's something that a lot of Blues fans are wondering themselves.
Yeah, and again, I'll answer this as the guy who was there. Chief got let go because the Flyers were a very impatient team. One of the great things about it
were. I feel like they changed. They've always been like this.
Well, they did change because they freaking accepted the Ron Hextall philosophy of let's just wait 6 years and we'll be good again. And now we're 7 years without a playoff victory in Philadelphia. But at the time when Ed Snyder was still alive, I mean, the Flyers were impatient year to year. Okay, so if they didn't win 1 year, then very next year there was going to be some kind of shakeup, and that was a great thing because the Flyers were always competitive, but it was also sometimes that was Ed Snyder's flaw in the fact that he didn't let it happen. He didn't let coaches, really get their teams to where they needed to get them to. If guys would get fired, I mean, hell, they fired Terry Murray after the team lost in the Stanley Cup final in 1997. He didn't get to come back in 1998 because they didn't win. So I think that the Chief just got a raw deal with the Flyers because of that. I would have liked to have seen him come back for another season, but I think that they felt like they needed to make this big change and go in a new direction, and it was not the right decision, obviously. And now here you see what's happened. We're still stuck in mediocrity and not even making playoffs in Philly. And the guy who was the coach here, actually the last two guys who were coach here before Dave Haxtell, have been in the finals each of the last 2 years representing the Western Conference. So there's that too.
Man, I didn't even think about that. It's a good point.
You had Laviolette and now Chief. Yep. So.
Oh boy. So yeah, let's get into this season. There was obviously Jordan Binnington became a story, and as you had alluded to earlier, kind of starts there in Philadelphia. Now there's a goalie that was coming up with Philly around the same time that a lot of people were saying could be a Calder Trophy candidate if he continued his play, and that was Carter Hart. Now, Carter Hart still, I think, is very high regarded across the league. But once you started getting your injured goalies back, which, Philadelphia goaltending this year, my God, I felt sorry for you guys. Brian Elliott, former Blue, comes back from injury. He kind of starts playing more, maybe not the best, but you're looking at that and comparing what Carter Hart can be and looking at the way Jordan Binnington came out of nowhere. Does that kind of give you guys hope for the future of the Philadelphia goaltending? If that question makes sense.
I don't know. I mean, Carter Hart's a good young player. He's got his head on straight. I can't say that for for all of the young guys that occupy lockers in the Flyers dressing room. I mean, I guess in a sense it gives me hope. But I think the problem with Carter Hart, or the problem that surrounds him, is because he's been so highly touted and for so long he's been thought as the heir apparent. He's supposed to be the guy who, everybody realizes that there was a mistake made in the acquisition of Ilya Bryzgalov and the subsequent trade away of Sergei Bobrovsky. Everybody watches it, even people who are not the typical Philadelphia 4-for-4 fan, which is all the sports radio people like to talk about around here. Most people will acknowledge the fact that the Bobrovsky trade was an absolute disaster and the Bryzgalov signing was terrible. And so it's almost like fans have been looking to glom on to somebody young in an effort to somehow go back and right the wrong that was done years ago. And every year, Flyers fans are looking for who's going to be the next guy, because we're just so used to terrible goaltending that when you finally have somebody who's there and looks like they're going to potentially be a good player, maybe an all-star player, maybe not a franchise goalie, people get excited. And, it was tricky, though, because the way that Hart ended up on the roster, and Ron Hextall had even said it, there were no other options, right? And I think that's part of why things got a little bit tricky around here. Throwing Carter Hart into the Fire wasn't quite like throwing him to the Wolves, but he was playing behind a pretty awful set of defensive pairs. And he's, he was able to elevate play and provide them at least somewhat stable goaltending. The problem is that, I think we've seen it year after year. A goaltender goes up for his first few games against competition, and he's new, and teams are, they don't have much of a scouting report, and especially on a 19-year-old kid, there's not much to scout. When he started to go up against the same team 2-3 times, you started to see the teams were beginning to solve him. And so, in a sense, we didn't get to ride that hot streak like the Blues got to, getting to a Stanley Cup final and not having teams necessarily figure him out. There is a little bit of apprehension, at least on my part, that, what if the best that we saw of Carter Hart early in his run is the best that we're ever going to see from him? It happens in sports. I mean, even a guy that you're familiar with in St. Louis, I believe, in Nick Foles, he was a guy who we thought was the miracle worker, right? 27 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. And everybody kind of wonders, what if things had gone differently in the playoffs? Could teams have figured him out by the time the Eagles could have gotten to a Super Bowl? And then you saw what happened in the years that followed. It was a lot of mediocrity. It was a lot of teams figuring him out. And that real, hot streak of being a young and up-and-coming quarterback that the teams don't have a ton of film on, it kind of goes by the wayside. And then you have a really nice set of breaks and you end up winning a championship and everything's forgotten. But Hart's an exciting player, but I think anybody who's been a Flyers fan for, most of their lives are still going to be apprehensive. So there's a very long-winded way to get there.
No. I'm with you. I actually, it's funny because you talk about the poor Flyers goaltending history, and that's something that's a long-standing conversation on this show is the Blues' lack of having a franchise goalie. I have a guess on who if the answer to this question will be. I'm going to ask you guys who the best all-time franchise goalie is in Philadelphia Flyers history. My guess is Ron Hextall. But go ahead and ask it. Who's the best franchise goalie of all time?
Got to be Bernie Parent because he won the 2 Stanley Cups. Okay. Different era. I mean, he's a Hall of Famer, right? I mean, Hextall was all of our era. I mean, I don't remember Bernie the first time I remember watching the Flyers was during the 79-80 season. They lost in the Cup final that year. Bernie was already gone. By then it was Pete Peters who was in goal. So, I mean, the best goalie of my lifetime is probably was Pelle Lindbergh, who died tragically in a car accident. And that's where Hextall was rushed up because of Pelle's death. But I think all time it's got to be Bernie. And yeah, do you disagree, Russ? I mean, I think it's got to be Perrant.
No, I guess it has to be Perrant. But like, think of somebody who's my age. Who have I gotten to see that's actually been an exciting goaltender? Or somebody
Roman
that's
Czechbonic.
I mean, seriously, it's like Roman. Do I go with Robert Esch? Does that excite anybody? Does Ray Emery excite anyone? Do I have to go with Antero Ninemaki? Now, like this is what I've lived my life to. I would say honestly, my favorite goalie that we've ever had in my lifetime is Ilya Bryzgalov. Sure, he was garbage. Sure, he was always into it with his coaches.
He was entertaining
sure,
as hell.
He probably hazed and absolutely mentally scarred Sergei Bobrovsky for life. But he did remind us that the universe is so humongous big. And that's one of those things that you need to just live by, right? Like, don't worry, be happy. Like I live my life the way that I do because of Ilya Bryzgalov on that 24/7 documentary.
That's my question, by the way. If you go back and watch that episode when he came out and announced that he was not playing in the Winter Classic.
I have good news and I have better news.
He calls those servers, guys, come here. I've got good news and better news. What do you want first? And I go, all right, Briz, what's the good news? He says, I am not playing
I'm
tomorrow.
not playing tomorrow.
Oh, and then we're looking at each other and we go, what's the better news? We have a chance to win. So yeah, I need my own IMDb page for that because I got two lines on the HBO show. Nice. Yeah, but
seriously, it's bad. Flyers goaltending has been dreadful. Perrant's the best one.
Yeah, it's funny that Russ says that the Flyers goaltending has been dreadful. There's a local a radio show host here who wrote a book that's coming out in September, and he asked me to write a chapter. And the chapter that he asked me to write was the 10 worst goaltenders in Philadelphia Flyers history. So I did an entire chapter on the worst goalies. Briz makes an appearance, but he's further down the list. But
who's the worst?
The worst is, and it's basic. This is mostly statistical, but there was a guy named Stefan Beauregard who played for the Flyers in the early 80s. I'm sorry. Yeah, in the 80s. And I forget, it was like 19 appearances, and in 8 or 9 of the 19 appearances, he allowed 5 goals or more.
Good for him.
And his goals against average was like almost 5. His save percentage was like 84. He was just terrible. He was just a bad guy. So I had to make him number 1. I mean, statistically, he sucked.
That is really funny because I actually know a guy who's the former Sharks practice goalie back in the late 90s, and he's kind of fancies himself a goalie expert. And so I asked him once, who's the worst goalie you've ever seen? And he says, Stefan Beauregard, no doubt.
Boom.
There you go.
That's it.
There you go. Yeah. So Beauregard had a career with like the Winnipeg Jets and a couple other teams as well. So he just had a cup of coffee with the Flyers, but boy, was he bad in his time with the Flyers. So
it's pretty hard to be a bad goalie in the 80s.
Yeah, you're right. You're right about that, Jeff. But I'll give you one though that I thought, were it not for statistical purposes, if I had to say worst goalie that I've seen, how about Michael Leighton?
Yeah,
Michael Leighton gave up the goal in the 2000. And look at Russ is getting all upset. Gives up
I
the
stayed up
game-winning
until
goal.
3 a.m. in Berlin, Germany, studying abroad, watching on some kind of jerry-rigged live stream, and I passed out face down during Game 6. And I lifted my head up, and the page auto-refreshed, and it was that one shot of Leighton letting the puck through, and the devastation. I just woke up. I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to go drink my sorrows away. And it was Germany, so it's totally fine at 6 a.m.
So my Michael Leighton story actually comes the next season. So Leighton, gets into the Cup final. They lose to the Blackhawks. The next year, I think he got hurt in training camp or something, and then he couldn't play for a while. And so that was the whole Sergei Bobrovsky when Bobrovsky first got to play, and I think Brian Boucher was his backup. And things started to get real hairy in the playoffs. They were playing against the Buffalo Sabres, and they lost Game 5 in Buffalo. They had lost Game 4, and then they went to Buffalo for Game 5. The goalies were terrible, and Leighton, they decided we're going to play Michael Leighton. Hasn't played all season long. We're going to play Michael Leighton in Game 5 in Buffalo, and Leighton was just awful. Just had a terrible game. And doesn't take the plane ride home with the Flyers. He got so upset, he decided to just leave the arena and didn't get on the plane. And so the Flyers couldn't find him. They had no idea where he was. And so one of the other players texted me and told me Leighton went AWOL. So I wrote about it. I reported it, right? So it's out in the Philadelphia media that the next day. I wake up in the morning. I'm getting my kids off for school. It's like 7 a.m. I'm getting in the car, driving the kids. Phone rings at 7 a.m. and it's a New Jersey number. And I'm like, I wonder who that is. And I turn it on. I put it on the speaker because I'm in the car. It's Paul Holmgren, who was the GM of the Flyers at the time. And I say, hello? He goes, Anthony, Paul Holmgren. I said, yeah? You motherfucker. like, hello? And then he proceeded to call me every name in the book for the next 30 seconds and then finishes it up with, no player or a member of this organization is ever going to talk to you again. I hope you're happy. And he hangs up the phone. I didn't even get a chance to get a word in edgewise. The phone hangs up, and I'm sitting in the car like, oh my God, what just happened? And finally, my son in the back goes, Daddy, who is that who's really mad at you? So I guess the Flyers didn't want that story out.
All these years later, we sat down and interviewed Paul Holmgren a few months ago. And the one who pissed him off was not Anthony. It was me.
It was Russ.
Because I compared him to a White Walker. And for some reason, that upset him. And I still don't know why.
So it was funny. So Jeff, we do this. We had a whole sit down with Paul Holmgren. Great. It was a great interview. He was very good. And after the interview airs and the podcast goes out, Paul sends a message through the PR rep for the team, and sends me a text that says, Paul wanted to thank you for all the kind words that you said about him on the podcast. He really appreciates it. He didn't appreciate what Russ had to say, though.
He also got mad, I guess. I think he was mad because I said in the aftermath of the interview, I was like, well, half the fan base will be happy when he retires. And I think that upset him too. But I think what would have upset him is if I had told the truth, that it's probably 80% of the fan base will be happy when he retires. But for some reason, I said 50%. And
it's so wrong. He's such a good man. He's a good guy.
He seems like a very lovely man. But the Flyers fans I don't know what to tell you. Whatever.
Yeah,
okay.
I can tell from experience. I know that he is not well liked in Philadelphia.
Thank you.
Yes, he's not. He's not, and I think he gets like Chief did. I think he gets a bad rap because I'll tell you, the Flyers fans didn't like Craig Berube as a coach either.
That's true.
But in my mind, it's because they don't know what the hell they're talking about. So
not Philadelphia. They're the most educated and well informed fans in the entire country.
Hey man, we got Cardinals fans here. Listen, I'm a big Cardinals fan, but best fans in baseball is a load of crap.
As Scott Rowland said, baseball heaven.
Baseball
heaven, St. Louis.
It's nice. I mean, listen, we got some passion here, and it's great. I love it. And anyone listening to the show, I apologize if I'm offending you right now, but there are so many know-it-all Cardinals fans that are so hard to sit next to at games, and not only are they rattling off statistics they don't even understand, they got their head buried in their phone, so they're not even watching the play. And it's just, don't call yourself a super fan if you're not even going to watch the damn game. All you're going to do is stare at your phone and ramble off stats that you don't get. You
know what? I'm going to be honest. Screw Cardinals fans. I'm going to tell you why. Because when I was getting ready for my fantasy baseball draft and I was looking in one of the later rounds, I started perusing Twitter. And I thought, what's a team that typically has some good arms coming up? Oh, of course, it's St. Louis. And I see all these St. Louis fans saying Alex Reyes is the second coming. He's going to be a great guy to pick up. So I picked up Alex Reyes. You know what Alex Reyes did? You guys know better than I did. He sucked. So, I'm done. That's all. And It's
So
fine.
I think I'm
It's
going to
fine.
be sending a message to Anthony when this is over that I appreciate everything you had to say, but not so much Russ.
By the way, Cardinals fans, I still believe in Alex Reyes as a guy who hosts a baseball podcast as well.
Here we go.
I'm a big believer in him. I know he's had injuries and hasn't come to fruition just yet. He's still pretty young. I still think he's going to be something eventually. But
why are
anyway,
we apologizing to Cardinals fans? They ruined my life.
I know. I'm apologizing.
Chris Carpenter ruined my life.
I'm apologizing to Cardinals fans because of
He
you.
went toe to toe with Doc. He ruined the Philadelphia Phillies. The
Russ,
Cardinals
I got to tell you,
ruined
that
the Philadelphia Phillies. I apologize to no one.
that is one of my favorite games of all time.
It was incredible.
Oh,
It was
such a good game.
absolutely
It
incredible.
was so well pitched by both guys. It was an unbelievable game.
Yep. Oh man, yeah. We could have a whole conversation here about the Cardinals and Phillies, but and Ryan Howard, St. Louis boy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's not do that because I'm sure we've talked baseball on our show before, and we have a lot of fans say I don't tune into you guys for baseball. I tune you guys for hockey. I can get baseball anywhere else.
I really do want to gauge really quickly how St. Louis works, because if you talk about another sport on a sports-specific podcast in Philadelphia, you're the Antichrist. I often make cross-sport references, and I'll get a few people who get really angry if I bring up the Sixers, or if I bring up the Phillies or the Eagles, or God forbid the Union. So for a hockey podcast, what happens if never mind, I was going to say the Rams, but you don't have much of a reason to talk about. Were people actually upset? Was that a real thing? Because sometimes when sports teams leave, the national perspective is that everybody was heartbroken and torn up. Were St. Louis fans really that upset, or was it blown out of proportion?
There was a lot of upset Rams fans, yes, but it was more that people were upset with the way Stan Kroenke went about his business and some of the shit that he said after he left St. Louis. Basically saying that they're just a baseball town, they don't care about football. That's crap. You look at how the Blues are constantly selling out every game, how much the city's got behind them. It's crap, what he said. And that's the biggest reason I think people get fired up, because Kroenke and then guys like Jerry Jones and other members of the NFL board, the way they conducted business to get the Rams out of St. Louis, it was definitely something that was planned, even though they said that they were doing everything they could to keep the team in St. Ous. That would be why.
Right.
It is.
All right.
But we don't get in trouble for talking about the Cardinals. It's just we get we do have and it's usually just people I know just kind of giving me trouble, because the big thing here in St. Louis is, even though the Blues are in the Stanley Cup final, there's going to be a show talking about the Cardinals last night, and they're going to break it down for 2 hours, but then they'll have a 15-minute segment on the Blues.
So is that how the sports talk radio out there works?
Oh, basically, yeah. It's all
Okay.
Cardinals all the time.
Okay.
Yep. So that's why. And I think that's part of the reason the Rams got upset, too, was because there was a lot of baseball talk. That's why, because the media perceives it as this town only cares about baseball, but it's really not true. Again, you look at attendance numbers and and TV viewership numbers, and that tells a completely different story than what you would hear on sports radio.
I can't imagine just building your sports talk radio around a dying sport, but that's just me.
It's not a dying sport. Oh,
I just said that to Rib Anthony.
I'm okay. Go ahead and continue, Jeff. I'm sorry.
All right. Well, let's there's two big questions I want to get to before we close this up. One of them is, and we kind of talked about this right before we started, June 23rd, 2017 was a big day in Blues history, especially if the Blues end up going on and winning the whole thing this year. That was the day the Blues acquired Braden Shen for 2 first-rounders and everyone's favorite, Yori Laterra. So we've had Jillian Fisher on this show. We've had Steph Driver from Broad Street Hockey on this show, and they've kind of voiced their displeasure for that trade. What's your guys' take on that trade looking back 2 years later?
I'm going to go first, Russ, because I'm going to talk about the trade, but then I will let you handle Yori Laterra.
I'm going to go grab my charger while you talk about the trade.
Yeah, because I know Yori Laterra is
laptop
your favorite person. All right, so the trade, I think it actually ends up being a good trade for both sides, Jeff, because Braden Chen obviously ends up being a producer for the Blues, and here he is 2 wins away. As you said earlier, we're recording right after Game 4 of the Stanley Cup from winning a Stanley Cup with the Blues. But the Flyers get 2 really good first round picks in that trade. And they use them to draft Morgan Frost and Joel Farabee, who are easily the top 2 forward prospects in the organization. There's a lot of people here who are suggesting that Frost could make the team next year. I don't think that's going to be the case. I think he's still got to go a year in the AHL. I think he just needs an NHL type body. He was playing in the OHL, and it's different when you're playing against 16, 17-year-olds than versus playing against grown men. So I think Morgan Frost needs to bulk up before he gets into the NHL, but I think he's going to be a top-end scorer. And I also think Joel Farabee is going to be a guy that the Flyers fans grow to love over the course of time as well. So I think those 2 players are going to be really good. When we look back at it, 8 years from now and sit there and say, wow, that was a heck of a trade for the Flyers. But in the short term, it works out completely for St. Louis. So I think it's a good trade for both teams. And it just drives me crazy when the fans here in Philadelphia go, we gave up Braden Chen and got nothing in return. Well, that's not true. You've got a lot in return. You just have to wait for it. So I look at it as a very good trade on both sides. But I know Russ wants to talk about Jori Lehtera.
Well, I think it upsets me more than anything when people attack our Scandinavian Pablo Escobar or our Scandinavian Tony Montana. The Finnish Fiend, as I so lovingly referred to him just now. For those who forget or never knew, the Flyers actually voted him. His teammates once voted him the life of the party. I wonder why.
Interesting.
Jori Lehtera was a guy. Braden Chen was fine. Braden Chen was a nice player. He was the guy that I had higher expectations for as part of the Mike Richards deal that led to LA winning multiple Stanley Cups. And to me, he never ended up living up to the hype. He was a solid power play scorer. There was nothing that he did that was overtly horrible or wrong. But you have to look at the value that we got back. And it's not the draft picks. It's Jori Lehtera. In 89 games played for the Philadelphia Flyers, he put up a whopping 4 goals, 7 assists, for a total of 11 points. He was a minus 15. He also netted 47 penalty minutes. Now, some people might say that seems low. Sounds like he didn't do a lot. I want to point out the fact that the Philadelphia Flyers, in all of their majestic glory this year, while Jori Lehtera was being investigated for his connections to a Finnish cocaine ring, my dude was an active roster player for the Philadelphia Flyers. My guy even came in and played a game while under investigation. This is like that Stephen A. Smith quote. I don't know if you're familiar with it, where he talks about Phil Jackson and Phil Jackson's bad choices about Lamar Odom.
Mm-hmm.
He signed Lamar Odom while he was on crack. That's the Flyers. The Flyers played Jori Lehtera while he was allegedly purchasing and or distributing cocaine. And you wonder why the Flyers didn't make the playoffs this year. You wonder why things fell sideways, went sideways on them. This is the kind of crap that we were dealing with in Philadelphia. Jori Lehtera, he was a guy. He was a guy, and we heard he was a good locker room guy. I don't know how. I don't know why. He brought nothing to the team. There were guys in the AHL that we clamored for all season. I mean, seriously, if you had a pulse and you could put 2 skates on and go out on the ice, you were faster and already more skilled than Jori Lehtera. And yet this team continued to roll him out and keep him around the team and keep him around a young locker room. It was one of the more perplexing things to happen in this very up and down Flyer season.
I will tell you that the day that trade happened, the minute when they announced, and I've told the story on the show before, so I apologize to our listeners for hearing the story for the 15th time for me. They announced, so Gary Bettman says, we have a trade to announce. The St. Louis Blues have traded Jori Lehtera. And when he said that, I jumped up. I yelled as loud as I could. I didn't even hear the rest of the trade. I had no idea what the Blues got, where they had traded him. And then I was like, well, shit, I need to hear what they got because they were already talking about who the next pick was going to be. And so then I pull it up on Twitter, and all Blues fans are saying the same thing. Oh my God, somebody took Laterra. Somebody took Laterra. And I'm like, okay, what the hell was the trade? Did anybody else hear the trade? So I finally saw who it was for, and I was shocked that they actually got a roster player for him. But my favorite Jori Laterra story, and I'm just going to share this with you because this is one I know you can relate to. In the Winter Classic, if you go back and watch, I think it was Tarasenko's second goal, the reason they score that goal is because Jori Laterra is the slowest player on the ice. and I tell you why. Because what happened was the Blues had pressure in the offensive zone. The puck goes the other way, and everybody's hustling back to try and back check and stop the Blackhawks from getting a good odd man rush. So the puck ends up getting poked at center, and it just flies up to where nobody should have been. But Jori Laterra was just coming out of the offensive zone. And so he ends up going up basically all by himself to where everybody catches up to him, and then he slides a pass to Tarasenko, and he ends up scoring. And I believe that ended up being the game-winning goal. And at the time, I remember even saying in real time, I said, Jori Laterra's lack of speed is the reason that goal is scored. And it was fantastic. Best thing he ever did for the Blues.
Yeah, you know, Jeff, we do a show, Russ and I, every home game in the press box, pregame and during intermissions. We do something called the Press Row Show, and where we live stream and talk about the game, what's going on, and or give a preview or talk about during the game. And we started it this year, and as the year went along, we got more and more people who would tune in. It was a really cool thing that we did. So we went back and looked at the metrics. The show that was the most watched show was when Russ went off on the Flyers playing Jori Laterra, the game when he was under investigation. That's what the fans cared about the most. They cared the most about Jori Laterra playing while he was under investigation for a cocaine ring in Finland, more than any other thing that we talked about that year. And so made me think that we really have to, find stories like that this year, Russ, more rather than just talk about what's going on in a hockey game.
I'm so happy for St. Louis that they got to actually enjoy good hockey. They got to pull themselves out of the doldrums of the basement. And meanwhile, we had to talk about the incompetence of Dave Haxtell. We had to talk about the dietary restrictions that Ron Hextall had been putting the players through. And Jori Laterra's cocaine ring. This is Philadelphia, my friends. Welcome. If you're looking for a team to support in this conference, by all means, glom on. There's plenty of room on the bandwagon.
Hey, I'll root for the Flyers over the Penguins any day.
Amen.
Of course.
There you go. So one more thing I want to ask you guys about, and that's because this show, again, another big topic for us, is the fact that this man is basically a staple in Blues history. Somebody that is up there in games played for the organization, points everywhere you look, plus minus, and his number is not retired. We even have T-shirts made from Let's Go Blues Radio that say "Retire number 44," and that is the man, one of my favorite, actually my favorite player of all time, and a man that I enjoyed sitting next to the press box in for a couple of years. Was the man, Chris Pronger. You saw him right at the end of his career. The 2010 run comes to mind as some of the best hockey I've seen him play. Just go ahead and talk about, whatever you want to say about Chris Pronger, because I know my audience is going to love to hear it.
Well, I'm going to give you a good Chris Pronger story in a minute, but just to kind of give you what he meant to the Flyers. He was the reason that team went to the Stanley Cup final in 2010. I mean, there's no doubt. It
wasn't Michael Leighton?
Yeah, well, it was not Michael Leighton. But, look, Danny Briere, if the Flyers would have won the Stanley Cup, Danny Briere would have won the Conn Smythe that year because he was so good scoring. He had 30 points in the playoffs and, led all scorers. I mean, he was on fire. But the emotional leader of that team and the guy who got that team, A, into the playoffs, and then B, got them to the Stanley Cup final and almost pulled off an upset against a far superior Chicago team, was Chris Pronger. He was that important to that Flyers run. And even the next year, I thought that he was an important player. He had a little bit of an injury and was still playing in the playoffs against Buffalo and New Jersey. It wasn't until the following year when he got hit in the eye, and that's when he had to kind of wrap up his career a little bit sooner than probably he would have wanted. You're right, Jeff. Just an awesome guy. The story that I want to tell, I can't believe I'm going to tell this, but I'm going to tell it. So there was a thing with Mike Richards, okay, and Pronger. So Pronger and Richards didn't always see eye to eye, but they kind of mended fences, and when they won the Olympic gold with Team Canada in Vancouver. What year was that? Was that
2010, I believe?
Was that 10? Yeah, I think it was 10. Yeah. Okay, so they kind of mended fences, but at the same time, Pronger didn't think Richards was a good enough captain, and never did. He always used to let people know that he wouldn't, if it was up to him, he would be captaining the team differently, which was great, and we all loved it. When we went to him for everything. So anyway, we're in Washington for a game in January, and Richards had done an interview with the Hockey News in September, but it didn't run until this January. In the story, he said he didn't like dealing with the Philadelphia media because they made up stories if they didn't think you were playing well. So we see it in this day. It's a Sunday afternoon game in Washington. Richards makes a turnover, and it leads to the game-winning goal for the Capitals. So he's in a pretty surly mood after the game to begin with. And so we all go down there. We're ready to talk about the game. And one of the writers asks him about this interview in the Hockey News, which Mike Richards didn't even know it had come out, didn't know anything about it. Well, long story short, a big brouhaha ensues between the media and Mike Richards, just yelling at each other. And not including, I was not part of it. I was part of it, but not yelling at him. And one writer in particular really, Sam Carchidi, Philadelphia Inquirer, got really in his face and had to be separated by Laviolette. Then after they were separated, they came back together again. It was just this nasty thing between a writer and Mike Richards. And after all the dust settles and we think it's all over, all the media is forced into one room and Mike Richards is forced into another, and we're just kind of standing around. And Pronger sticks his head out. He had just been in the shower, looks around, and then looks right at us and goes, "Keep stirring the pot, boys. Keep stirring the pot."
Love it.
He felt like he said the kid needed it, right? But he just kept, and he's doing this thing. He's like, "Just keep stirring the pot, boys. Stir the pot." It was awesome. He was so good. I was so upset that his career was cut short the way it was cut short, because I loved having him in Philadelphia. And the one other opportunity I got to really work with Chris is I left the newspaper and actually went to work for the Philadelphia Flyers with running their website for 2 years. And Pronger was an advisor for the draft. It was the year they drafted Sam Moran, and we did a behind-the-scenes video. I wrote and edited something called Flight Plan, kind of 24/7-ish kind of ripoff, and Pronger was brought in to kind of scout Sam Moran. So I got to spend a lot of time with Pronger talking about this kid who's going to be this, their draft pick, et cetera, et cetera. And Moran still hasn't really panned out. He's still on the team. He's probably going to get a final shot next year. But it was really kind of cool to, really hang out with Pronger and pick his brain on what makes a good young defenseman. And, yeah, just the best, the absolute best. I wish he would get back into the game in a management capacity, because it's really what he'd be good at.
Funny story about him that I'll tell, that I need to redact the names that he was talking about. But as I said, we were sitting in the press box. He sat right next to me, which was just an absolute dream for me, because like I said, I grew up idolizing that guy. And so we were talking, he was talking, it was me, Chris was in between me and Andy Strickland, who's a pretty big time reporter out here.
Yep.
Yeah. And so we were all sitting there, and Pronger at one point, just, and at this point he was working for the Department of Player Safety. So he was kind of, in a non-biased role, but Pronger, he wears his heart on his sleeve. And he, at one point, he throws his arms in the air, and Andy looks at him and says, "Chris, what's up?" And let's call him Player A, because I don't want to say what name it is. May or may not be a current St. Louis Blue. He goes, "Player A, what the fuck happened to that guy? That guy used to be so fucking good. And I just kind of turn and I just kind of look at him and I'm like, not a fan, huh? And he goes, man, he was so good back in the day. He fucking sucks now. And you know what? You can write that down and say that I said it. And go ahead and just put it in the next story you write. And I'm like, okay. And I wasn't going to do it. I was like, whatever. Later he came up to me. He goes, you know what? I'm in a position to where I'm really can't be talking like that. So please don't put that in the story. And I'm like, I wasn't going to, but thank you for clarifying.
Yeah, it's okay. Yori Laterra got his eventually. Right?
Yeah, right.
Oh man,
guys, this has been great. I appreciate it. Russ, you want to weigh in?
This is just like a real quick thing. Pronger, if you think about it, a guy who came to Philadelphia in his 16th NHL season, he transcended what Flyers hockey was. He transcended, he really elevated the Flyers into a very tough Philadelphia sports radio market. He made the team relevant. And for somebody like me who remembered, I think it was 5 years prior, the Flyers had gone out and signed another large, lumbering defenseman in Darian Hatcher, who never lived up to the hype. To go out and watch the way that Chris Pronger came in, and I think it was his first year with the Flyers. He finished 5th in Norris voting, and he was, I think, 35 at the time. You don't see something like that happen. And to see him come in and play at the level that he played at, he kept, there are moments that came out from around that cup run, especially around him and Claude Giroux. I just think about if we had just gotten to have a couple more healthy years of Chris Pronger at the end, would the Flyers have gotten back to a Stanley Cup? Would the team's fortune have been different? And I would say, yeah, it probably would have. Watching his career get cut short the way that it did, granted, it was, 18 seasons playing professional hockey. It still is one of the saddest things, and it's one of the saddest what-ifs in all of Philadelphia sports history in my lifetime. And, just seeing that he's staying active and involved in the game and knowing that he's still around and lending his expertise and his leadership and his knowledge to younger players is something that we can kind of hang our hat on. But I just can't help but think about what if with Chris Pronger.
Oh, it's the same thing in St. Louis. I mean, I know that, he left the year after the lockout, and the Blues ended up being the worst team in the NHL and drafting first overall the next year after that. But there was still the contingent of people, and I'm one of them, that says even if they would have not done anything else and they just would have kept Chris Pronger rather than trade him to Edmonton, I think they're still a playoff team. And if they're still a playoff team, once, you guys know as well as anyone, you make the playoffs, you can go anywhere if you're in. I mean, you never know what could happen. But on top of that, the Blues get a new owner just a couple of years later. He starts making some pretty big changes. Who knows? Blues might finally have won their first Stanley Cup with Chris Pronger captaining the team and hopefully finishing his career as a St. Louis Blue. When that trade happened, that was when the what-ifs started for the Blues. I mean, that was the same year Al McInnes retired because of his injuries, and that was the year that year Doug Waite and Keith Tkachuk had been moved to the trade deadline to make their Stanley Cup runs elsewhere. So it was just a lot of what-ifs, and it all starts with Chris Pronger. So I think Blues fans can relate to Flyers fans in that sense.
Jeff, building off of a what if, I just want to flip the script on you for a second. Sure. There's a guy who plays for your team that I've always been intrigued by, and he's somebody that I think was the center of a rumor that had gone around Philly 6 years ago. I mean, it was a while back, about a potential franchise shakeup, trading this player for now Flyers captain Claude Giroux. And this player was mentioned in trade rumors around January, if I remember correctly, in a potential deal for Jake Voracek. I want to know what your thoughts are, and what are St. Louis's thoughts going forward on Tarasenko?
Well, I will say that I was one of those people, I'll fully admit. You look at the calendar year of 2018, and Vladimir Tarasenko fell off a cliff. There was, I still don't know to this day if it was an injury. He just recently had some kids. There's some other rumors that were going around the organization that I don't want to further spread. about what was going on with him. And it's just, it did appear like, okay, he's seen his best days. I mean, we said that on this show. Vladimir Tarasenko, his best days are behind him. And that was the reason. There was a lot of people saying, let's see what this team can do if they can move him and still get a valuable piece in return. And there was a lot of talks of moving him to Edmonton, to Philadelphia. I think Pittsburgh was in there. There was a lot of teams. I mean, obviously, any team in the league is going to want a Vladimir Tarasenko, even if it's just kind of a project to try and figure out if he's still an elite sniper. But it was right when the team flipped the script. We talk about the Philadelphia game there on January 7th when Binnington made his first start. Really, the team turned around that night, and you started seeing a different Vladimir Tarasenko. I mean, it took a while for Jaden Schwartz to pick his game up and get back to the level that we know he can play at. But the only player before January 7th that was worth a damn on this team was Ryan O'Reilly. And so the consensus in St. Louis, and anyone who tells you differently is just a flat-out liar, was Vladimir Tarasenko. Most of the city, I think, would have been okay with a trade. But now that he's rounded out and become the player that, again, that we know he can be and that we've seen him be for years now, he's back to being in the good graces of Blues fans. I mean, again, we haven't seen the end of the Stanley Cup final here, but he's been playing some fantastic hockey, some of the best of his career, the last 6, 7, 8 games. And he's loved now. I mean, let's just say if this summer there's a deal that just blows Doug Armstrong away and he decides to move Tarasenko, let's just say Blues fans are coming up to his office with pitchforks and, ushering him out of town, put him on the train out. So I think that he's loved again. But and I think that this is the Vladimir Tarasenko. I mean, you look at just 1 year, the calendar year of 2018. Outside of that, he's been an elite sniper in the NHL. I mean, if he stays with St. Louis his whole career, there's chances he's going to catch every record that Brett Hull or Bernie Federko holds. So, he's beloved now. But I'll tell you what, if you would have been talking trade with me 6 months ago, I think myself and half of St. Louis would have said, yeah, we'll take Claude Giroux. Let's do it.
Just please pass on to your front office that around the draft, the Flyers, now I'm not speaking on their behalf, but I would be willing to part with Jake Voracek and a very highly touted prospect. He's actually been referred to here as the Finnish phenom. His name is Lauri Jatera. Now, there's a chance that it's gonna take a while for him to come back over. He's got some pending visa issues over there, but put it together.
I'll pass that along. This guy
sounds deal.
This guy sounds like he could be high flying.
Oh yeah, I hear that
with high being the operative word there, Jeff.
Of course,
he toes a real white line on the ice.
I like that. I like that in a player. As long as he's the life of the locker room, that's all that matters.
That's what being a teammate's all about.
That's right. Well, guys, again, this has been a lot of fun. I was trying to come up with what exactly we were going to talk about, and obviously the Laterra trade came to mind and the big brawl back in '72. But we obviously touched on a lot more than that. It's been a great time talking to both of you guys. We'll have to have you on during the season at some point, maybe for like a Blues Flyers game preview or something, if there's a weekend game especially. But I want to give you guys plenty of time here to let my listeners know, and anyone who might be a Flyers fan or just want to learn more about the Flyers in general, where they could find you guys, how they can find your show. I know you have multiple ones. Feel free to plug them all. And where they can read about your thoughts on Philadelphia sports, and, of course, how they can interact with you on social media.
Go ahead, Russ. This is your thing.
You sure you don't want to do it? You're positive?
Oh, you've got it like memorized. You've got it like down to a science.
Well, I'd really like to thank you, Jeff, for bringing us on. Of course, we are from the Snow The Goalie podcast, the only Flyers podcast, the People's podcast, the Players podcast, Prognosticators podcast, the Presidential podcast, the Pedialyte podcast, the Pampers podcast. We can be found at crossingbroad.com, which is your source for all Philadelphia sports. If you're interested in learning more about the Flyers, if you're interested in learning about the Phillies, if you're a Cardinals fan and you're looking for a team that will break your heart, by all means, check out our Phillies coverage. Anthony and one of our other writers, Bob, They host a Phillies podcast called Crossed Up. We've got everything covered. We have a Philadelphia podcast that covers every sport called Crossing Broadcast. We've got 2 soccer podcasts. I know that St. Louis is working on getting an expansion team in MLS, but we've got 2 soccer podcasts over here. It's Always Soccer in Philadelphia and Crossing Broad FC. Hey, chill out, Anthony. And of course, with the legalization of sports, there's a sports betting podcast called Broadlines. Anyway, those are all shows that people could find. All of our shows are available on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, and Spotify, wherever else you get your podcasts. But of course, we're here for the hockey, and it's Snow the Goalie, and I mean, pretty much every goalie that we've ever had on the show. That was Mike McKenna. Who else do we have on, Anthony, that was a goalie? They all hate the name of the...
Scott Gordon was a former goalie.
Scott Gordon, now former Flyers coach.
Alex Lyon.
They all hated the name. They said they don't like to get snowed. But we encourage you to Snow the Goalie. And we're greatly appreciative.
Mike McKenna, St. Louis connection. I like
we
that.
We love Mike McKenna. He was...
Good dude.
I think he might have been our best interview that we did the entire season. And most people said, like, why do you want to go and interview this journeyman? And he was just absolutely fascinating. Like, even if Blues fans don't want to listen to us wax poetic about the Philadelphia Flyers, that's an episode that's worth going back and listening to, especially the heritage and his family of racing and what it means and the human side of professional racing. That was some of the best, I think, podcasting that's been done recently. He was phenomenal. I think he's got his own show now. He was really a fascinating guy.
6 Degrees of Mike McKenna, I believe, is what his podcast is called for anyone interested.
That sounds right.
Yep. Well, guys, again, this was fun, and hey, you know what? We're sitting here making jokes about soccer, but we are a huge soccer market. So why don't go ahead? Let's go ahead
the
and
beautiful
do this.
game.
Why don't you tell us, if people wanted to tune into your soccer podcast, what differentiates you guys from any other soccer podcasts out there?
Well, the show It's Always Soccer in Philadelphia, that's hosted by one of our writers, Kevin Kincaid, who was the Union beat writer. He was the number 1 Union beat writer, which isn't saying much because the Union have been god awful for their entire existence, except for this year. This has been a good season for them. He brings on people from across the nation to talk Union soccer. It's been good. Our other show, Crossing Broad FC, it's a European soccer show. So we hit on every league, and we've started to kind of lean into the sports betting side to kind of give people a little bit of an insight. And we actually did a guide ahead of the Champions League final, and all of our small props hit. So that was kind of nice. So that's what we do over there. So if you're looking for something to give people a primer on the other leagues, that's the show to go listen to.
Yeah,
Cool.
You can follow Russ on Twitter at Joy on Broad, and I'm at AntSanPhilly on Twitter, since Russ forgot those 2 kind of important items, right, Russ?
Yeah, that's right. People can send their hate mail to me for, I guess, ragging on which St. Louis teams did I trash today? I guess
pretty much all of them except the Blues, I think.
Yeah, I love the Blues. The Blues are
great. I
great.
mean, you ragged on the Rams fans, but who cares?
It was out of love.
They're gone.
It was out of love. Look, I grew up in a town that won an NFL championship in 1925 and had it stolen by the Chicago Cardinals. So may the Arizona Cardinals rot in hell.
Speaking of, but the Arizona Cardinals were once the St. Louis Cardinals, Russ.
That's true.
St. Louis still has Cardinals. I can't. I can't. There's a championship curse. It's the curse of the Pottsville Maroons. Please enjoy that, Arizona, you horrible desert wasteland.
Yeah, Bill Bidwell is still a much hated figure here in St. Louis for moving the team away. So
I feel really bad. I genuinely feel bad for St. Louis. I didn't realize there were so many cases of teams being ripped away from your fans. I genuinely feel bad now. I still hate Scott Rowland, but I feel really bad.
The Atlanta Hawks were there too, right, Russ?
This is just not good,
man.
Anthony.
You're probably
stop. Like, you're twisting the knife, man. This is
I was
too
gonna
much.
say, I think every Blues fan right now listening is just going, "Oh my God, please stop that guy from talking."
All right, I'm done.
Thanks again, guys. I appreciate you coming on. Again, we'll have to have you on sometime during the season. I appreciate it.
Anytime, Jeff.
Thanks, Jeff.